The sunshine across parts of Wales and southwest England, but temperatures still disappointing for the time of year, only 18 or 19 degrees in the south and around 10 to 12 degrees further north. Tuesday generally starts a little bit dry though. There will still be plenty of showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along eastern coast as well, and generally a bit of a cloudier day, particularly as we head towards the afternoon. The showers perhaps not quite as heavy in eastern parts of England as they're going to be on Monday, but still some showers around on Wednesday as well. There is further outbreaks of rain likely on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but temperatures are slowly on the rise.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
All sides.
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
this is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's coming up to 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, the painful truth about this country that no politician is willing to tell you, but I will. In just 2 minutes' time, the truth bombs are coming. In the big story, as they promise a triple lock-on tax, do Labour's sums add up? We'll hear from all sides on that one. And in a Take at 10 special, I'll be paying tribute to the TV doctor Michael Mosley and explain how his incredibly simple and effective method has helped millions of people to lose weight and reverse their type 2 diabetes. Don't miss that at 10 o'clock. It may just save your life. Michael Mosley, remembered at 10, but his legacy lives on. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. So much to get through, but first, the news headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much, and good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. A plan to force private schools to pay VAT could lead to larger class sizes, according to the Shadow Attorney General. The policy is expected to raise £1.5 billion a year, according to estimates by the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Emily Thornberry says it's necessary to ensure there's enough money to feed school children.
What we need to do is we need to raise the money in order to make sure that children going to state schools have had breakfast. That's what our priority is, and we need to raise the money from somewhere. And what we're going to do is we are saying everything we're going to spend money on, we're saying where the money is coming from, because we will have a properly costed manifesto, and all our spending commitments will be costed, and we will be able to say where it comes from. And sure, you know, there may well be complaints about it. I understand that, but I'm afraid that if I have a choice between putting VAT on private schools and making sure that the children in my area can have breakfast before they start learning, I know where I am.
Conservative Party Chairman Richard Holden criticised that plan and says families and children will ultimately pay the price.
Emily Thornberry today has completely admitted that Labour's approach to taxing schools is going to mean larger class sizes for children right across the country, particularly in the state sector. The children are going to be paying the price for Labour's ideological obsession, with over £2,000 extra on tax for their parents and larger class sizes for children. It's children and families who are going to pay the price under a Labour government.
International news now, and Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz has resigned from Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Last month, Mr Gantz set a deadline of the 8th of June for Mr Netanyahu to lay out how Israel would achieve its 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas rule in Gaza. Well, today he said leaving the government was a complex and painful decision. Netanyahu responded on X, saying this is not the time to quit the campaign, this is the time to join forces. Mr Gantz's resignation comes a day after 4 Israeli hostages were rescued in an operation which the armed wing of Hamas said has also killed 3 other hostages. And Michael Mosley's wife says she is devastated after his body was found on the Greek island where they'd been on holiday together. Dr Claire Bailey Mosley described her husband as wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant, and said the family takes comfort in the fact that he nearly made it to safety after an incredible climb. Dr Mosley, who was 67, was with his wife and friends at a beach on the island of Symi on Wednesday before setting off alone for a walk. His body was found around mid-morning today beneath a fence that runs around a bar on Agia Marina Beach, which is surrounded by hilly, rocky terrain. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning that QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to...
Thanks, Tatiana. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In the big story, as they promise a triple lock on tax, do Labour's sums add up? We'll hear from all sides on that one. In a Take at 10 special, I'll be paying tribute to the TV doctor Michael Mosley and explain how his incredibly simple and effective method has helped millions of people to lose weight and even reverse their diabetes. Don't miss that at 10. It may just save your life. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my top pundits, Linda Jubilee, Nigel Nelson and Yosef David. Plus, the most important part of the show, your views. They come straight to my laptop. There it is. gbnews.com/your say. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come. We start with my big opinion. Over the years, elections have been fought and won on a 3-word slogan. Get Brexit done. Labour isn't working. End the chaos. Vote for change. Well, there's one 3-word slogan that you won't hear from any of the parties this time round, but which is in fact the most important. Britain is broke. I love this country and we have huge potential. And I hope that whoever wins the election will unlock the colossal talent that we have here. Britain, with its dynamic, diverse workforce, its geography sandwiched between Europe and America, its universal language of English, its long history of education, culture, diplomacy, manufacturing services and entrepreneurialism ought to be a high-growth economy. We should be, and we can be, the envy of the world. But that's only going to happen if politicians get real and get honest. But I won't hold my breath. So on their behalf, let me tell you what they will not tell you. The United Kingdom lives beyond its means. Just last month, the deficit, which is the difference between what's coming in and what's going out, was £20 billion. That's right, we borrowed £20 billion last month alone just to pay the bills. We are essentially living off the national credit card just to keep the lights on. And it's our debt and our deficit, don't forget, not theirs. It's like someone taking out a massive mortgage or a loan on your behalf. You wouldn't like that, would you? But that is what has happened. £20 billion borrowed in just a month to pay the bills is not normal. It's not sustainable. In fact, it's a total freak show. But none of the politicians are admitting it. But they'll have to when they get into power, whoever it is. Even the monster-raving loony party or Count Binface will quickly lose their sense of humour when they see the books. It sickens me to think that I was presented with supposedly expert economists on my old talk radio show during the pandemic, saying that all of this borrowing in order to indulge in the ludicrous experiment of stopping a virus, one which in my view failed spectacularly, was somehow cost neutral. What about inflation, I said, if you print money? What about the cost of interest going up on all this new debt? I was called a granny killer and someone with no understanding of economics. Well, that's aged well, hasn't it? Inflation soared and interest rates skyrocketed. What the hell do they teach these people at university? Post-COVID, I'm now hugely sceptical of all so-called experts. And if you've got letters after your name, I'm inclined to run a mile. I'd much rather ask the regulars at my local, the Mossy Well, a great boozer. Why? Well, because they've got common sense and they live in the real world. Then, once you've dealt with the deficit, there is the national debt, which now stands at over £2 trillion. The interest alone on our borrowing is £100 billion a year. That's a government department in its own right. It's almost twice the defence budget. The cost of interest alone, £100 billion. Which is why the only debate during this election should be about repairing the public finances and getting that borrowing down. Which takes me to the elephant in the room, public spending. Whether it's the money pit that is the NHS, record amounts going in, but the waiting lists remain, and we're only getting sicker. The welfare bill is exploding with upwards of 5 million working-age adults not active in the economy. Councils are going bust. Public sector pensions are a ticking time bomb. It goes on. With taxes unable to realistically go much higher, the next administration has no choice but to cut. That's what you and I do, isn't it? That is what you and I do when money's too tight to mention. We don't replace the car, we skip the holidays, we give up buying clothes or eating out, we drink indoors. For whoever gets in July, this shouldn't be badged up as austerity. It is simply living within our means, something which any government has a duty of care to deliver. Now, there may be areas of the public sector that need targeted investment or even an increase in funding. But overall, the cost of the state must come down and its size and scale has got to shrink. Why is that? Well, because we already can't afford it, with 20 billion going out of the window every month. Britain is a great country, but it's broke. Whoever forms our next government has got to fix the roof, because it's almost blown off as we speak. It'll take 5 to 10 years, it'll involve sacrifice, it will be painful. But to survive and then to thrive, we have to do it. Whoever gets in, Britain needs a bit of tough love. And for those who don't like it, tough luck. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Let's hear from tonight's top pundits. We have journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and social worker and commentator Yosef David. Great to see all three of you. Welcome to the show. Linda Jubilee, Britain is broke and we live beyond its means.
So on the money, by the way, Mark. That was one of the best monologues I've heard you do in many months.
That's very kind of you, thank you.
But that was particularly
It gave me no pleasure to write it or deliver it.
No, I'm sure it didn't. I mean, the fact of the matter is that successive governments, over a very long period of time...
Correct. All parties
have failed to tackle immigration, failed to tackle the fundamental problems of the NHS, and failed to tackle what is, I suppose, a newer problem of what's going on with our universities, which should be and should remain world-class. Let me give you one little anecdote very quickly, and this is what I think is at the nub of the problem. Recently, I think within the last year, I interviewed a fairly well-known politician. I won't say which one and I won't say which party, and I interviewed him about the state of our watercourses in this country, particularly Thames Water, where I live, because that week I'd seen raw sewage swafting down the street. And he said to me, do you know what, Linda? He said, I'm sick of people talking down this country. We need to talk it up. Well, frankly, we're not in a situation that we can market our way out of.
Yeah.
So then he said, this is the punchline, I don't think there is a real water problem in this country. After all, I can go trout fishing in the local chalk stream every weekend.
Yeah, well, listen,
really,
I tell you what.
That tells you everything.
Indeed. Well, that fool took the bait, didn't he? But that is, in many ways, the entire political establishment, Yosef. You and I, and my viewers at home, and my listeners on the radio, we can do the maths, can't we? We look at our income every month, and if more is going out than comes in, we have to change how we live. But no government has done that recently, and no prospect of that happening in the future.
No, this is a disaster waiting to happen. What we're effectively doing is taking out a new credit card to pay the interest of the last. Eventually, this has to come to a head, because the spending can't go on with an unlimited amount for the tax burden for the people who actually have to pay it. But another thing, when you were giving your monologue, I was thinking to myself, what about value for money? With all the spending, with all the debt that is incurred, and I can speak from personal experience because I'm a social worker who's been in the statutory sector, for all the amount of money that we're spending, our services are not working properly. And the ire of the public with regard to the tax burden of recent events wouldn't be anywhere near what it is if things were actually working the way that they were supposed to. The average social worker has a caseload that simply isn't manageable, and therefore thresholds for the people that we give care to have to be pushed up, and the most vulnerable people aren't getting the care that they need. So the system isn't working, and throwing more money and trying to spend your way out of debt surely is for the birds.
Most definitely. This will be a concern for a Labour government, a Conservative government. Whoever gets in, Nigel.
Whoever gets in. I mean, you sounded very much like the Institute for Fiscal Studies, if I might say so.
Yeah.
They've been warning, and no one's paying them any attention at the moment. They've been warning that whoever forms the next government, they're going to face the worst economic outlook for 80 years.
Yeah.
What the IFS reckons is the way out of it. You either cut public spending by 3.5%, which is huge. It was just been raised by 1% by Jeremy Hunt, or you're looking for £20 billion of extra cash, which would suggest tax rises. The question, obviously, is whether or not they're right. So should it be a Labour government coming in? Rachel Reeves has a fiscal rule, which means that day-to-day spending is covered by revenue, and you then only borrow to invest. And that's the bit that would give us the green technology, which Labour are basing on growth. So the answer to this is, if you can get economic growth, you do solve the problem.
What I really want is I want all of our politicians, Green, Lib Dem, Plaid Cymru, SNP, Conservative Labour, I want them all to have a look at the fact that Britain lives beyond its means, that we are broke. We're a great country, but we are on our uppers, and it's time to do something about it. But next up in the big story, as they promise a triple lock on tax, do Labour's sums add up? We'll hear from all sides on that next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel. As he kissed her goodbye with...
Ian Phoenix was in charge of a counter-terrorism group dedicated to bringing peace to Northern Ireland. He was a husband and a father.
He was a real Irishman. He had the twinkly Irish eyes. He enjoyed a good joke. He liked a good glass of wine.
Susan Phoenix first heard of the accident that killed her husband on her car radio.
I was just driving along going, no, no, no. I can still see it. I can still feel it, even 30 years on.
On the 2nd of June, 1994, the Chinook helicopter that was taking them to a peace conference crashed into the side of a mountain on the Mull of Kintyre, killing 4 crew and 25 of the country's top counter-terrorism experts. At a board of inquiry, the Ministry of Defence concluded there was no doubt whatsoever the accident had been caused by the gross negligence of the 2 pilots, Flight Lieutenants Richard Cook and Jonathan Tapper. But there was doubt. Plenty of it. There were no eyewitnesses on that foggy night, no flight data recorder, no voice recorder. It took until 2011 for the Ministry of Defence to admit they had not a shred of evidence. At the time of the crash, systematic errors in the software that controlled the engines had been reported. The MOD had seen its safety budget slashed in the run-up to the accident. In a statement, the Ministry of Defence told GB News, in 2010, the Mull of Kintyre independent review was carried out and the findings were fully accepted. The review did not find new evidence to suggest mechanical failure, and no safety issues with the Chinook Mark II were raised in the report. This weekend, the families have formed the Chinook Justice Campaign. But justice may never come.
The People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to the show. Am I going to be brave and just jump on those emails without checking them? Of course I am. Richard says, good evening, Mark, on the message board. To save money, stop putting up illegal immigrants in hotels and send them back to France. How about this? Labour uses Diane Abbott's abacus. Of course things add up, Mark. OK, listen, more of those bits of feedback to come. But first, it is time for the big story. And this is fascinating. We're going to talk about Labour promising not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT for 5 years if the party wins the general election. Labour's Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has guaranteed a triple lock on the big 3 taxes over the course of a first term in power. It means that Labour would need to make cuts or find other tax rises if they win on the 4th of July. So do Labour's sums add up? We'll hear from my pundits shortly, who are divided on this. But first, I'm delighted to welcome author and former Labour Party spokesman James Matthewson. James, lovely to have you on the show for the first time. How can Labour deliver its ambitious programmes without massive cuts or raising other taxes?
It's a good question, Mark. And I mean, I think if there's anybody to answer it, it's Rachel Reeves. I never thought in a million years I'd hear myself saying that, because I'm not from particularly the same side of the party as Rachel Reeves. However, I do think over the past few months, she's done an incredible job in building fiscal credibility. And I think that's the crucial thing here, is credibility, because the Tories, I think the situation that they're in now, and I think many of you, your other panellists will agree on this generally, that they can't offer anything that's going to be believed. And actually, it's quite ironic when those of us who remember the Labour campaign in 2017 and 2019 and the difference between the two, the difference for us at that time was credibility. You know, we were almost believed in 2017 that things that were in that manifesto could be delivered. By the time 2019 came round, there was no credibility left in the party, so anything that was offered wasn't believed. And I think the Tories are in the same position now.
OK, but James, let me interrupt this love-in, OK, and those rose-tinted, or is it Labour red-tinted spectacles you're wearing, because Peter Mandelson has warned against some of Angela Rayner's proposed union reforms. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is thought to be sceptical as well. There's going to be an all-out civil war over this should Labour win power, isn't there? Labour is not united on economic policy.
I'll give you a little bit of it. I'll let you in on a secret, Mark. Labour's not united on anything. The Labour Party's never been united on anything. It's part of Labour's ongoing weakness, and that will always be the weakness of a movement that was created to represent working people. The trade unions have their interest in the party. All the other factions and all the other traditions, as we call them in the Labour Party, all want to have their say. Angela Rayner's in a crucial position, and she's flexing her muscles. She did this on the Diane Abbott thing as well. But she's seen how far she can push it and how far she can extend her powers, because she holds together the Labour Party and the trade union movement. She's representative of that, because you have to remember Angela Rayner came up through the trade union movement.
But she holds the Labour movement together, but won't she split the Labour government if they win power?
Well, no, because they'll have to listen to it, because they need the trade unions, because you can't have a Labour movement without the trade union movement. You have to remember the trade unions created the Labour Party, not the other way around. So, of course, they have to listen to them. So Angela will have a key position at that table. If Keir Starmer and the team around him are sensible and they don't give in to, a lot of the egos and vindictive power play that always happens inevitably when people are in power, then they'll be able to say to Angela, OK, yeah, we will listen to you, your side of the party, and to the trade unions, and we'll compromise. And that's the key here, and hopefully that'll stop any kind of civil war, because I don't see any appetite for that.
Well, you might call it a compromise. Some on the left of the Labour Party, if Labour win, might call it a betrayal. But listen, I've got another question for you, James. What is the point of a Labour government if there's no money to spend?
Well, it's a very good point. It all comes back to how we spend money as a country. I think you were talking before about, the racking up of the bills and the credit cards. That language only really came into use in the austerity years of Cameron and Osborne, There isn't, and those of us who've looked at how governments work, that's not how governments work. A lot of the public seem to think there is this idea that governments have a credit card bill and they have to pay it every month, and it's like our household expenses. It's simply not, and it doesn't work like that. Of course, the economy is very different.
James, I'm getting flashbacks to my talk radio show in 2021 when top economic experts said to me, Mark, the borrowing won't be inflationary. It's cost neutral. Interest rates are historically low. Now look where we are. I mean, you're saying we're not living on a national credit card. £100 billion a year in debt interest alone. That's an entire government department.
You're right, but I think at the same time, there is a difference here. And this is why the biggest issue I have at the moment is people who say there's no difference between the Tories and between Labour. There is a difference, and it's how you view the economy. Now, I joined the Labour Party to see redistributive measures in place economically, because those of us who are on the left of economics want to see that happen. Because I believe, Mark, and I believe I'm right in this, and I hope you'll hear me out, people who have more money in their pocket spend more money, and the economy benefits as a whole. Billionaires who get more money hold on to that money, and we don't see it go into the economy.
OK, well, listen, James, stay with us. I want to bring my top pundits if I can. I've got Nigel Nelson, Linda Jubilee and Yosef David. Yosef, do you agree with what James has had to say there, that actually Labour will be very sensible if they win power, and Sir Keir Starmer will manage tensions and rivalries within his own party?
Well, Labour are traditionally known for higher spending budgets that very often aren't costed. But the global trends, as well as legacy of previous governments, will probably mean that Labour are straitjacketed into sane fiscal policy. It's uncharted territory for them, but they're not going to be able to raise taxes as much as they would like.
Yeah, well, that's the issue, isn't it? And that's my point that I just made earlier, James, Nigel Nelson, to James, about Labour not having the spending power to deliver its ambitious and progressive agenda. And I think what lies ahead is not just an economic problem for Prime Minister Keir Starmer, but a political one as well.
Well, I mean, there are two different things here. You were talking about the unions not being terribly keen on some of Labour's policies. That's a separate issue. That's the Charter for Working People, which only one union has come out against, and that's Unite. When it comes down to the economy, we're back to this idea that you fund day-to-day spending from the revenue you bring in, you borrow to invest. What you invest in is the green technology, which could reduce bills by household bills by £300, create 650,000 jobs, and you get economic growth on the back of that.
When are those bills coming down by £300? What's the timeline for that? And those 650,000 jobs, are they happening on the 5th of July if Labour win?
No, you won't see this overnight.
6th of July?
No,
early August.
You won't see it overnight. I think that it would take a little bit longer than 24 hours to actually get the...
When my kids get back to school?
Get their feet under the table, but you will see it by the end of the 5-year Parliament.
All right, fair enough. Linda Jubilee, I understand what James is saying. He's a very convincing and rather articulate young man, but do Labour's sums add up?
No, look, I've only got A-level economics, so, I mean, he's obviously much more academically qualified than me. But when Rachel Reeves and Labour say there'll be no increase in the big three taxes and no cutting of any substance to public spending, anyone can work out that's impossible. What Paul Johnston from the Institute of Fiscal Studies said this morning was he's sick of hearing all politicians say what they're not going to do. What he wants to hear is what are they going to do? And at the moment, the crisis, I think it's already a crisis, is so grave, we actually do need to hear some proper policies and some proper number crunching, and we're not getting it.
There you go. James, you get the last word.
Wonderful. Well, I would say to Linda, first of all, you've beaten me on because I haven't even got any A-levels. I've only got a few GCSEs, unfortunately. So, I mean, my game is politics, and that's where I'd bring it back to, because Labour haven't won this election yet. They need to win the election. We're talking as if they're a government already. We need to remember that this manifesto that's going to come, these pledges, are all about trying to win power and horsepower. We'll hold them to account at a later date. But for the millions of people who need a Labour government in this country, they need to win first and need to win convincingly.
Well, James, I hope this is the first of many appearances on Mark Dolan tonight. We've loved your company this evening. My thanks to author and former Labour Party spokesman James Matthewson. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Do Labour's sums add up? OK, folks, at 10 o'clock, it's a special take at 10. My tribute to Michael Mosley. And I'll be explaining his amazing method for weight loss and the reversal of type 2 diabetes. So a moving tribute to a great man and something that could just change your life as well. That's my take at 10. Michael Mosley, it's a special one, don't miss it. But next up is Prince Harry now asking the UK government to pay for protection all around the world. Queen Camilla says King Charles won't behave himself, and as Diana's brother Charles Spencer divorces for the third time, are that family cursed? I'll be asking leading royal author Angela Levin live in the studio next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of rain around for many of us overnight tonight, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes to start on Monday. This frontal system sinks its way south and eastwards overnight Sunday and into the start of Monday, but high pressure is never too far away out towards the southwest. Those frontal systems bring areas of rain that have affected Northern Ireland today across parts of Wales, central and northern parts of England through the early hours of Monday morning. Generally turning drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, where it's likely to turn chilly under those clear spells, perhaps a touch of grass frost in places, but a much milder start across much of England and Wales, and quite a damp start too, as that area of rain slowly pushes its way south and eastwards through the morning. For Scotland though, despite a chilly start, there will be plenty of sunny spells through the morning. Across the very far north, plenty of showers though, pushing their way southwards as we go towards the afternoon. But for southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, even northwestern parts of England, plenty of sunny spells to start the day. Wales will also see some sunshine through the morning, but for much of England, it's generally a cloudier start to the day, and that heavy rain could cause some disruption during the morning rush hour. That rain continues to push its way eastwards as we go through the rest of Monday morning and in towards the afternoon, but closely followed by plenty of heavy showers pushing their way southwards. These perhaps turning quite persistent across parts of Scotland, and they could be quite heavy in places. The best of the sunshine across parts of Wales and southwest England, but temperatures still disappointing for the time of year, only 18 or 19 degrees in the south and around 10 to 12 degrees further north. Tuesday generally starts a little bit dry though. There will still be plenty of showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along eastern coasts as well, and generally a bit of a cloudier day, particularly as we head towards the afternoon. The showers perhaps not quite as heavy in eastern parts of England as they're going to be on Monday, but still some showers around on Wednesday as well. There is further outbreaks of rain likely on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but temperatures slowly on the rise.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, folks, lots more to get through. I'll get to your feedback very shortly. But first up, is Prince Harry now asking the UK government to pay for protection all around the world? Queen Camilla says King Charles won't behave himself. And as Diana's brother Charles Spencer divorces for the third time, are that family cursed? For reaction to these big royal stories, I'm delighted to welcome Prince Harry's biographer, royal journalist Angela Levin. Angela, lovely to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Prince Harry has permission to continue his legal action against the Home Office for top-level royal protection when he's in the UK, but it seems he could want more. What's going on?
Well, he wants it done very quickly. He's been able to appeal against the first court case. So this is number 3. He owes over £1 million now. That's what's been spent, and he will have to pay it back. So he's very keen to get the OK. So he's got the green light that he can take it to court again. However, he actually said to the judge, can you please hurry it up, because I would like it done at the end of the month or just into July, because Meghan and I are doing a round the world tour. We want to make sure everything's all right. So you think, shock, horror. Is he going to use our tax money to go all around the world? And in any case, he can't do that. But the judge very nicely said to him, no, you can't push in. You have to wait and it'll all go. And you're not well enough in the VIP group to actually go and in front of everybody else. So the arrogance of that, you see, he's still thinking in terms of he's a prince. He's not a prince. And I think that this country will go absolutely mad if they use our money.
Taxpayers' money.
Taxpayers' money to go around the world. And I suggest it'll be a lot in Africa, because they think that worked, although it didn't, actually.
Nigeria was a disaster, wasn't it? I mean, the First Lady of Nigeria was deeply offended by Meghan Markle.
Yes, and
her rather risque outfit.
Yes, and inappropriate to wear at that time, and she was very open about it, and she was, why has she come, and all that sort of thing. But if they do, they start going around everywhere and using it well away from this country, I think it will be very, very annoying to everyone. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. I can't see how you can keep on going back again and again and again. But he's very determined. He's absolutely determined.
However, Angela, he is the King's son. That was not a choice he made. Doesn't he deserve the best protection? How would we feel as a country if, God forbid, something happened to Harry?
No, the point is that if he comes anything to do with the royal family, he has the best protection. He has, like, the king and the queen. He gets that very good protection. If he comes to see friends or to do something that's got nothing to do with the royals, he has grade 2 or grade 3
But even when he's just seeing his friends, he's still Charles's son, isn't he? And that wasn't a choice he made.
Yes, but if you step down from being a royal, you can't expect the same sort of attention that you get if you're not. And you can't actually control it. And you can't have... He can bring people over, but they can't have guns. Whereas here, our police can have guns. And they have all the information they need about, you know, rogues here and there. And he doesn't get that. But you have to accept that. You can't take it out of the government. It's just not right. He can pay for it if he wants to, for himself, but he can't actually expect us to pay for him and his family all the time.
And this Harry and Meghan world tour, I mean, that'll be a major headache for the palace, won't it? Because King Charles and William were reportedly fuming about the Nigerian trip because it was a quasi-royal visit. It sounds like the couple will be doing that on a global scale this summer.
Well, it does. I don't know whether it's true, but I think they thought it was great fun. And unfortunately, you know, Meghan wants to destroy the royal family. She has done for a long time.
Of course, she would deny that.
She was she's a very, very determined woman, and she tries to copy it and do it in a more modern, upbeat way, which she thinks is much better. Well, you don't know what's right until you learn, actually. For example, you know, because she went and they were there with somebody who was, he had to pay £2 million or something, £1 billion in America. He was a fraud, and they were being very nice to him.
Their host in Nigeria.
Whereas if they come from investigated week somewhere else by the royal family, by the aides, then you are safe and you know who you're talking to. But I feel that if what happened in Africa was drips that can go through down to the royal family and make it very difficult, and people can assume that's how they're behaving, but of course they're not.
Indeed. Well, let's look at another wider member of the family. Diana's brother, that's Harry's uncle, Charles Spencer, divorces for the 3rd time. Will this poor man ever find happiness?
It's very, very difficult, actually. I wrote a book about the background to Diana, and really what happened is that her father was very unpleasant to them once the divorce came about. He had hit his mother, his wife, and Diana and the little boy, Jed, had seen that through the banisters. And it's very, very difficult, and you haven't got that sort of stability. And little Charles was only 3 when his mother went away, and he couldn't bear it at night, and he would cry and cry and cry. And Diana was frightened of the night too, and she didn't dare go out, but she felt it was her responsibility to look after him during the day. So they were very unhappy children. They had loads of au pairs and nannies coming and going. Usually the mother would have had looking after the responsibility for the children, but he wanted to have that, so that was very difficult. But then, you see, he had a very bad time at school where he felt he wrote a book about it, and he was raped. And that was very, very difficult for him.
Outrageous.
And so he used to cut himself, and he used to make himself sick. Now, Diana did exactly the same. And I think if you have that type of background and childhood, it's very, very difficult to relax into a happy family life.
Most definitely. James, give me a bit of picture of some of the royals, if you can. Clearly, this has been a very tough time, and we wish him well. Third marriage, as you say, there's a real pattern there, which is very sad. What about Queen Camilla complaining about King Charles, saying he's not behaving himself? Many wives watching will be familiar with this.
Yes, he said, she said he doesn't do what he's told. And various people have been saying, well, isn't that a true man?
Yeah.
They don't do that. But she said that about 3 or 4 times now when she meets someone, that's what she says. But she also always says, well, he's doing very well, but he just isn't taking it easy enough. But he was taking it easy. He was pacing up and down. He couldn't bear it, but he was at home. And the doctors, I think, very wisely, not that I know medically anything, that people need to be happy. They need to do what they want if they are ill, because it helps them get better. And I think him being out and about, and he wouldn't have wanted to miss the D-Day event at all, or trooping the
unlike a few other notable individuals who shall remain nameless. Last but not least, Angela, some indirect news from Catherine, Princess Kate.
Yes, it was really thrilling, actually, that she wrote to the Irish Guards, who are going to be the ones who are trooping the colour on Saturday. And she said, she had been made colonel, and she said how sorry she was that she couldn't be with them, but that she hopes that she will be there very, very soon. No, it was one very soon.
Yeah.
And they were delighted and very touched. And it shows that she's there, really. She's mentally there, she's emotionally there, but she just can't go out and about now or work hard because she's not well enough. And we just bless her and wish that she feels well soon as possible.
Most definitely, we do wish her well, and a chink of hope that we will see her at some point in the future. But of course, her recovery is the #1 priority.
Maybe Wimbledon. She loves Wimbledon.
Wouldn't that be fantastic if she was on centre court? We can but hope. Angela, a thrill to see you. Looking fabulous in royal blue tonight, let me tell you. Do come back and see us again soon. The doyenne of royal reporting, Angela Levin. Coming up in a Take It 10 special, I'll be paying tribute to the TV doctor Michael Mosley and explaining how his incredibly simple and effective method has helped millions of people to lose weight and reverse their type 2 diabetes. Don't miss that at 10. It may just save your life. But next up, could the Liberal Democrats achieve the biggest win in their history? I'll be asking my Mark Meets guest, former Lib Dem MP Mark Oaten, next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got 2 fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually. And, oh, no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you, even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a trouble muncher for their kids? What you've got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in, or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
Like, you'd imagine you'd want one of these trouble munchers in every classroom and in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom.
When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Coming up in my Take at 10, my tribute to Michael Mosley and why his legacy may just help you lose weight and save your life. That's a special Take at 10. Don't miss it. But first, Mark meets... And this evening, can the Lib Dems achieve the biggest win in their history on July the 4th? Let's get the views of the ex-Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament for Winchester and former leadership contender Mark Oaten. Mark, welcome to the show. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Mark.
Nice to have you in the studio. What does a successful election look like for the Lib Dems this time round?
From my perspective, I think they need to be a little bit more ambitious. So they've talked about increasing the numbers. Actually, I think they could get 60, 70, maybe 80 in this climate. It's back to how things were back in 97. Now, then they got 46. But I think it's slightly worse than 97 for the Tories. So the prospects, if they target carefully, could be 60 or 70 seats. I think privately, they'll be disappointed if it falls below that figure.
Right. What is the difference between the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party?
I think it's a nature that you have about internationalism. It's your views on Europe, for example. It's your views on being upfront about taxation. And it's a very, very strong liberal principle that you're always going to stand up for the vulnerable in a way that sometimes I feel the Labour Party doesn't have the courage to go out and say it. You know, one of the things about Keir Starmer is he's so cautious. He doesn't want to offend anybody. I'd like to think that at times the Liberal Democrats are prepared to offend people by speaking up for minorities, maybe being more upfront about taxation, and certainly trusting individuals to take decisions rather than the more big state approach which the Labour Party has.
But weren't the Lib Dems and aren't the Lib Dems there for people that are a bit afraid of Labour, and that somehow the Lib Dems are a bit more moderate, a bit more business-friendly, just perhaps a bit less left-wing?
Well, certainly as the Labour Party...
I mean, no Lib Dem is a socialist, right? The Lib Dems don't believe in socialism.
You have a big debate in the Liberal Democrats about whether you're genuine liberals or social liberals. In other words, whether you believe in controlling the state and maybe interfering, or whether you don't want too many rules and regulations. So there's quite a debate there. But I think the big difference is that what Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have done is shifted the party to the right. And so actually, it's quite hard in some areas to see a difference between those two main parties. I would like the Liberal Democrats to be radical, to be different. There's a danger, though, that as they try and get those 70 seats, they too don't want to offend anybody. And I think maybe Ed could be a little bit bolder and come out and say a few more things.
Well, yes, let's talk about Ed Davey's campaign. He's been on the paddleboard, he's been on a wobbly bike, and he's been careering down a water slide, let's hope that's not a metaphor, on an inflatable. What do you make of the rather eye-catching campaign so far?
I mean, I have to say, when it started, I thought, oh, God, this is going to backfire. You know, there's going to be, is this guy serious? Then the second day and the third day and the fourth day, I started to think, well, you know what? They're being, you know, looked at, they're being talked about, which is always a struggle for the third party. And then when you see Starmer and Sunak so wooden in all of these debates, so cautious, suddenly you think, actually, there's a human being here coming out in Ed Davey. And if it takes a few stunts and falling in the water, I think it's probably a risk that he should take to show he's different, show you can have fun in politics as well. It's not all dull, and also contrast himself to Sunak and Starmer, who are so dull in this election.
Will he pay the price for his handling of the Post Office scandal, given that he didn't grant the sub-postmaster
Alan Bates, thank you. Alan Bates, a meeting when he was, in government. Was that a mistake? And will he pay the price for that politically, do you think, in July?
Was it a mistake? Yes, it was. Will he pay the price? I don't think so. He's come out and said that he regrets it. And I think what it does show is just how many politicians were having the wool pulled over their eye by the Royal Mail. It was a scandal in terms of what happened to the individuals who had to go to jail, who lost their jobs and their livelihood. It was actually also a scandal for the way in which the establishment covered this up. And Ed would say, look, I asked the questions, but if they tell me a lie, how do I know it's a lie? So I think there might be some sympathy that he was put in a pretty difficult situation, as many others were.
Indeed. What about you, then? What attracted you to the Liberal Democrat cause in the first place all those years ago? Because you started as an SDP person, didn't you?
All those years ago, and it was all those years ago. Yeah. I was 18, had to decide how to vote. Somebody knocked on my door, and they were a Liberal. At the time, back in the 1980s, if any of your viewers can remember that, there was a big Thatcherism. She was very unpopular at the time. The Labour Party were crazy. They were to the left. I quite liked the idea of this new party. It was set up. It was neither left or right. You could join by credit card. It was revolutionary. It broke the mould. And I guess for a young 18-year-old, it was different. And I got wrapped up to it. And then, Mark, drugs and politics, it's just like a drug. It's an adrenaline thing. Of course. Once you start getting involved, it's really, really hard to stop.
Yeah, most definitely. And the rest is history, of course. You even flirted with the leadership at one point.
Which was a huge disaster. I mean, what was I thinking of? I think one of the dangers of politics is you climb up the greasy pole, is you get wrapped in, you believe what people are saying to you, you believe the hype. And you need to have a long, hard look and say, do I really want to do this? I probably didn't, but I was stupid enough to do it, and it all came crashing round big time.
Exactly, and you weren't helped by having a bit of a complicated private life, which, of course, should remain private, but the News of the World got hold of a couple of stories. I think you'd certainly indulged in some adult company, and that was characterised as a bit of a scandal. And then, I think officially in 2019, you came out as gay.
Yep.
So was it difficult keeping your sexuality private for so long? And did that affect your career, do you think?
I mean, hugely. Look, having your phone hacked by the News of the World was pretty bad. But at the end of the day, it was my mistake. I went off and did those things in my private life, which I shouldn't have done. But I was struggling hugely with my sexuality. I didn't know what was going on. I wanted to experiment, which was wrong and dangerous and stupid. But now, when I look back, do you know what? I don't regret things. I regret the hurt I caused to my family and my children, but I don't regret the fact that I was able to stop politics, experiment, and eventually find where I wanted to be. And now I'm able to say in a studio, I'm gay, which feels really strange because I could never have done that 10 years ago.
Well, indeed. I mean, would you ever consider a return to politics now that you can be yourself?
No, I wouldn't. I enjoy what I'm doing now. Bluntly, I earn too much money to go back to politics.
You see, that's the problem.
That is the problem.
See, I wish you'd be in politics because we need people with a personality and who are authentic and honest. What do you make of our modern politicians? They're all very stiff and cardboard cutout, aren't they?
I mean, I think it's absolutely awful at the moment, if I'm absolutely honest about it. I look at the politics now. Where are the whole big beasts that we used to have?
Big personalities, big characters.
Tony Blair, Ken Clarke, Michael Heseltine, Paddy Ashdown, even, bless him, Charles Kennedy.
Yeah, of course.
Big figures that you knew. I can't name half the cabinet now. Yeah. Now, as a kid, I could name the cabinet. They're all on Spitting Image, weren't they? Yeah. And you knew these characters. I think what we've got is, unfortunately, a dumbing down of our politics, and it means that interesting, exciting people just don't want to do it.
Indeed. By the way, outcome of the election, I know it changes by the day, but, I mean, it's a Labour landslide, do you think?
Labour landslide with a strong Lib Dem presence.
There you go. Well, listen, great to have your presence tonight. Thank you so much, Mark Oaten, former Lib Dem MP. Fascinating stuff. Well, next up, in my take at 10, my tribute to Michael Mosley. And I'll be explaining how his incredibly simple and effective method has helped millions of people to lose weight and even reverse their type 2 diabetes. Do not miss it. It is a Take at 10 special, and it may just save your life. Plus, tomorrow's papers, my top pundits, and in the last word, we'll be hearing from our Fleet Street insider about all the twists and turns in the election. But my tribute to Michael Mosley comes from the heart, and that's next.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of rain around for many of us overnight tonight, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes to start on Monday. This frontal system sinks its way south and eastwards overnight Sunday and into the start of Monday, but high pressure is never too far away out towards the southwest. Those frontal systems bring areas of rain that have affected Northern Ireland today across parts of Wales, central and northern parts of England through the early hours of Monday morning. Generally turning drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, where it's likely to turn chilly under those clear spells, perhaps a touch of grass frost in places, but a much milder start across much of England and Wales, and quite a damp start too, as that area of rain slowly pushes its way south and eastwards through the morning. For Scotland though, despite a chilly start, there will be plenty of sunny spells through the morning. Across the very far north, plenty of showers though, pushing their way southwards as we go towards the afternoon. But for southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, even northwestern parts of England, plenty of sunny spells to start the day. Wales will also see some sunshine through the morning, but for much of England it's generally a cloudier start to the day, and that heavy rain could cause some disruption during the morning rush hour. That rain continues to push its way eastwards as we go through the rest of Monday morning and in towards the afternoon, but closely followed by plenty of heavy showers pushing their way southwards. These perhaps turning quite persistent across parts of Scotland, and they could be quite heavy in places. The best of the sunshine across parts of Wales and southwest England, but temperatures still disappointing for the time of year, only 18 or 19 degrees in the south and around 10 to 12 degrees further north. Tuesday generally starts a little bit dry though. There will still be plenty of showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along eastern coasts as well, and generally a bit of a cloudier day, particularly as we head towards the afternoon. The showers perhaps not quite as heavy in eastern parts of England as they're going to be on Monday, but still some showers around on Wednesday as well. There is further outbreaks of rain likely on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but temperatures are slowly on the rise.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is coming up to 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In a Take at 10 special, I'll be paying tribute to the TV doctor Michael Mosley, and I'll explain how his incredibly simple and effective method has helped millions of people to lose weight and even reverse their diabetes. That's right, we have lost Michael Mosley, but his legacy lives on. Do not miss a Take at 10 special. It may just save your life. As they close in on the Conservatives and amid claims reform could become the new opposition, has Nigel Farage's election gamble already paid off? I'll be asking former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. Plus, I'll be asking Anne whether social media will influence the outcome of the election. And if she was running now, would Anne Widdecombe be on TikTok? And in the last word, all the election latest with our well-connected Fleet Street insider. Back to me if you can, Alistair, because let me tell you that I've got a bit of a bombshell that's happening over in Europe. This is a developing story sent over to me by our editorial director, Mick Booker. Check this out. French President Emmanuel Macron has sensationally dissolved the National Assembly. That's the lower house of the French Parliament. He's called a snap election after his party suffered a devastating defeat in elections to the European Parliament. There you go. This is the French president basically in a turf war with Brussels. It's all kicking off. I'll bring you reaction before 11. All I will say is thank God we're out. We've also got tomorrow's newspaper front pages, a packed show, lots to get through. My tribute to Michael Mosley. You won't want to miss it. 2 minutes' time. But first, Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. The top story this hour. Michael Mosley's wife says she is devastated after his body was found on the Greek island where they'd been on holiday together. Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley described her husband as wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant, and said the family takes comfort in the fact that he nearly made it to safety after an incredible climb. Dr. Mosley, who was 67 years old, was with his wife and his friends at a beach on the island of Simi on Wednesday before setting off alone for a walk. His body was found around mid-morning today beneath a fence that runs around a bar on Agia Marina Beach, which is surrounded by hilly, rocky terrain. In other news, the Prime Minister has promised to recruit 8,000 more neighbourhood police officers if his party wins the general election. Rishi Sunak says this would help drive down crime. The Conservatives say the plan would be funded in part by increasing visa fees by 25% and making overseas students pay a higher level of immigration health surcharge. He's highlighted the Tory record of recruiting 20,000 officers since 2019. But Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it's another empty promise, adding that 90% of crimes are going unsolved. She also says that Labour has a funded plan to put 13,000 more neighbourhood police and PCSOs back on the streets by cutting back office waste. A plan to force private schools to pay VAT could lead to larger class sizes. That is according to the Shadow Attorney General. The policy is expected to raise £1.5 billion a year, according to estimates by the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Conservative Party Chairman Richard Holden criticised the plan and says families and children will pay the price. But Emily Thornbury says it's necessary to ensure there's enough money to feed school children.
Everything we're going to spend money on, we're saying where the money is coming from, because we will have a properly costed manifesto, and all our spending commitments will be costed, and we will be able to say where it comes from. And sure, there may well be complaints about it. I understand that, but I'm afraid that if I have a choice between putting VAT on private schools and making sure that the children in my area can have breakfast before they start learning, I know where I am.
And Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz has resigned from Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Last month, Mr Gantz set a deadline of the 8th of June for Mr Netanyahu to lay out how Israel would achieve its 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas rule in Gaza. Today, he said leaving the government was a complex and painful decision. Netanyahu responded on X, saying this is not the time to quit the campaign. This is the time to join forces. Mr Gantz's resignation comes a day after 4 Israeli hostages were rescued in an operation which the armed wing of Hamas said has also killed 3 other hostages. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Mark.
Thank you, Tatiana. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight. As they close in on the Conservatives and amid claims reform could become the new opposition, has Nigel Farage's election gamble already paid off? I'll be asking former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. Plus, I'll be asking Anne whether social media will influence the outcome of the election. And if she was running now, would she be on TikTok? Plus, in the last word, all of the election latest with our well-connected Fleet Street insider. Plus, the bombshell news in Europe. That's right, over on the continent, it's all kicked off. Is Frexit on the way? A furious Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has dissolved part of the French Parliament, the National Assembly, because of the outcome of European parliamentary elections. He's not happy. It's all kicked off. We'll bring you more on that before 11 o'clock. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits, Linda Jubilee, Nigel Nelson and Yosef David. A packed hour, folks. Those papers are coming and Anne Widdecombe is waiting in the wings. But first, a very important Take at 10. The devastating news of BBC star and celebrity doctor Michael Mosley's death is a tragedy for his family and loved ones. My heart goes out to them, his 4 children and his amazing wife, Claire. There are no words for this loss, the untimely passing of a fit, healthy and vibrant man. I had the privilege of interviewing Michael Mosley on my old talk radio show, and he spoke with good humour, wit and knowledge. He was a great doctor, a great broadcaster and a great man. And this is a huge loss to more than just his loved ones. Michael Mosley, in my view, was single-handedly the most important figure in the debate around nutrition in this country. He was ahead of the curve on the low-carbohydrate diet, intermittent fasting, the importance of good sleep, sunshine, gut health, correct breathing and focused high-intensity exercise. He was a walking example of his own philosophy, having reversed his diabetes, something which he inherited from his own father, and he reduced his waistline as a result. Michael Mosley was behind the famous 5-2 diet, where you eat normally for 5 days and have a much smaller food intake the other 2. Whilst the 5-2 diet put his name on the map, it was his later books, including the Fast 800 Keto, in which he struck gold for millions of people. Now, the Fast 800 Keto is a method that I adopted and it helped me lose around 3 stone. Can you believe it? And ex-Labour MP Tom Watson lost 7 stone. That's right, he lost 7 stone. Again, thanks to Michael's method. It's so incredibly sad that Michael is no longer here to convey his transformative health message. But let me use this platform to do it right now. So how do you lose weight, reverse your type 2 diabetes and be the person you want to be? Well, according to Mosley, whose approach was rooted in science and evidence-based medicine, you do the following. You get processed carbohydrates as close to 0 as possible. Bread, biscuits, pasta, rice, potatoes, beer and sugar. Sorry, folks, all the nice stuff. You eat in as short a time frame as possible, so-called intermittent fasting. For most people, eating all of your food in an 8-hour window, for example, let's say between midday and 8 p.m. This allows the body the other 16 hours, when you're not eating, to digest the food and release energy from stored body fat. In other words, you get yourself nice and slim. And Mosley recommended so-called HIIT exercise, short sprints rather than a casual jog in the park, an intense go on the bicycle on a hill rather than a casual cycle in town, or lifting heavy weights slowly. Intense exercise, which he argued gives you more metabolic bang for your buck. Now, I'm not a doctor, obviously, and if you change your diet or exercise routine, you must consult your GP. None of this is advice. Do your research and speak to the people that know. But it's my personal view that, frankly, it's telling, and it's very, very sort of unsurprising that some of the medical establishment strongly disagree with what Mosley had to say, in spite of his success. Like all revolutionaries and innovators, Michael Mosley faced enormous pushback. And in fact, Mosley's dietary approach directly contradicts the NHS's official Eat Well guide, which encourages the consumption of carbohydrates and industrially produced vegetable oils as part of a so-called balanced diet. But this is NHS advice which has seen people get fatter, not thinner, and type 2 diabetes explode. NHS advice which has told patients that type 2 diabetes is incurable, that it's a chronic condition which will only get worse and requires a lifetime of medication. Well, Mosley's millions of fans around the world would beg to differ, with countless individuals telling their stories of reversing their type 2 diabetes by eating in a smaller time window, by doing efficient, intense exercise, and by cutting those carbs, putting paid to the myth that it's all about calorie counting. So here's the science bit, which of course Michael did so well. Michael Mosley explained on his TV shows and in his books that insulin is the main fat storage hormone of the body. When insulin is high, you store fat on your belly, your bum, and everywhere else. When insulin is low, you burn it. It just melts away. Starchy food and processed carbohydrates spike insulin, which sees blood glucose converted into fat. Mosley argued that a diet comprised of healthy protein like fish, eggs, meat, and poultry, as well as green vegetables, salad, berries, and healthy natural fats like extra virgin olive oil, will likely see the diabetes that you're suffering enter into retreat, energy levels increase, hunger disappear, and the waistline shrink. This is a method successfully rolled out by the inspirational NHS GP and another regular on this show, Dr. David Unwin, who has achieved similar transformative results for his patients with the same method. Michael Mosley was successful because his approach worked for so many people. He changed and improved lives. I predict that his book sales will now go through the roof, meaning that many future lives will be saved as well. Maybe yours. The Fast 800 Keto book will, in my view, become a health Bible in the years ahead. I certainly hope so. Elvis Presley left us, but the music remains. And Michael Mosley was a total rock star himself in the medical field. He has tragically died, but his legacy lives on. The man is a hero, and the passing of this expert on nutrition is hard to swallow. A remarkable guy, a lovely man. May he rest in peace and may his legacy go on. I'll get to your views shortly. Have you read any of Michael's books? Did it work for you? Are you curious about his method? gbnews.com/your say. Like I said before, if you're going to change your diet, go and see your GP, although it's interesting to note that a lot of what he recommended was against what the NHS tell you to do. Make your own mind up. I won't take sides. Let's hear from my top pundits now. Journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and social worker and commentator Yosef David. Let me start with you, Yosef. Your reaction to the sad news of Michael Mosley's passing?
I'm deeply sad to hear of the death of Michael Mosley. I think he was a visionary. He was funny, quirky, an expert in his field, and he had something about him that inspired you, that enabled you to connect with him through his experiences, and the fact that he knew his stuff and he believed in it. I'd like to wish his family a long life, and may his memory be a blessing. You know, I'm somebody who's benefited from the 5-2 diet myself. I used to have a size 36 waist. It's hard to believe I wasn't the fine specimen that I am today. But I still go back and watch his documentary on another outlet which is less impartial and reputable. But I use it to look over the facts that he gave and the way that I was inspired all those years ago when I'm feeling a dip. And I can say that I very often feel that I've got much more energy and much more drive based on eating things at certain times. There's only so much you can get from eating. There's only so much enjoyment you can get from eating. If you put it at particular times, then the rest of the time have a healthy diet. Overall, you're going to have a much healthier lifestyle.
Most definitely. How much weight did you lose yourself, roughly, do you think?
So I used to be a size 36 waist. I'm now a size 32.
Unbelievable. Your body's a temple. You look fantastic. You're a handsome devil, let me say. Linda Jubilee, we've lost Michael Mosley, but his legacy will go on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a terribly, terribly sad irony that he should die at such a young age when he has undoubtedly added decades of lifespan to so many people. I was a reporter on ITV's Tonight programme for 7 or 8 years, and many of the programmes I did were about food and nutrition, and he undoubtedly led the way. Although I can't speak much about intermittent dieting, I don't really know much about that.
Yeah.
He undoubtedly waved the flag to stop people eating ultra-processed food, which they are so harmful. And I think really the medical profession is right behind him in that regard, because these foods are calorie-laden, and he's the one to highlight that and to actually stress that we're eating, you know, enough to feed the average field worker in Victorian times and sitting on the sofa.
Yes, briefly, Nigel, we know the NHS is overwhelmed. Yes, it needs more money, but at some point we're going to have to tackle lifestyle-related illnesses. And really, the great Michael Mosley had the answer. He had a solution.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. It's a legacy he leaves behind. As you can see, I'm not a great one for diets myself.
I think, can I just say, I think you're perfect the way you are, and I think he's a very lucky woman. You're barrel-chested. You've got the frame of a Greek fisherman. And
so I had a very sort of un-Michael Mosley pasta and bread for lunch. But knowing that you're doing a tribute tonight, I had sushi for dinner. So I think he'd be quite pleased about that.
Brilliant. Well, I'm pleased. I hope it was sashimi, the raw fish, and none of the rice.
It was.
I'm glad to hear it. Listen, folks, there you go. A truly great guy. Did you read his book? I'll get to your messages shortly. gbnews.com/your say. As they close in on the Tories and amid claims reform could become the new opposition, has Nigel Farage's election gamble already paid off? I'll be asking former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe next.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness. I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it goes straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my take at 10, my tribute to Michael Mosley. This from Phoebe Woodison, who is a GB News member on the message board. Hi, Mark. I totally agree with your tribute to Michael Mosley. He was an inspiration and spent all his time scientifically testing all of the ways that people could help themselves without dependence on medication and gimmicky diet plans. He didn't deserve to die lost and alone, and my heart feels for his family. Phoebe, thank you for that. You speak for all of my viewers and listeners in those words that you've just said about a lovely man. OK, folks, writing in the Daily Express, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has said that his party is in pole position to become the new opposition should the Tories collapse at the general election. With the party closing in on the Conservatives in the polls, has Farage's 11th hour election gamble already paid off? Let's get the views of tonight's newsmaker, former government minister and broadcaster Anne Widdecombe. Anne, lovely to see you this evening. You told me on this programme some time ago that Nigel Farage did not need to stand as an MP or lead the party. Have you changed your mind? Is the lady for turning?
Well, I'm certainly very glad, and was very glad at the time, that he changed his own mind. And decided that he would, after all, stand as an MP, but above all, that he would lead the party. Now, I think Richard Tice did a tremendous job. He got us from being in a 2 or 3% in the polls to where we were when the election started, which was solidly in the teens. He did all of that. But Nigel Farage has that je ne sais quoi, which the public just love. So I'm absolutely delighted that he's chosen that. I do think that as long as he was campaigning for us up and down the country, he would have been effective, but he's doubly effective where he is now.
Anne, you think he's got the je ne sais quoi? Half the country thinks he's full of merde. He's having a laugh, isn't he, talking about being the opposition? If Reform UK are lucky, they'll win 1 seat.
No, he's not having a laugh at all. And nor am I when I say I do think we will become the effective opposition. Now, remember that Nigel Farage got us out of Europe without setting foot inside Westminster as an MP. And so don't always underestimate what can be done from outside. And I think that when the next election is over and the Tories, I believe, will be reduced to a rump in Parliament, I think a lot of them will look at Reform and will say, hang on, they're saying what we used to say.
Anne, could you give me a prediction, or not prediction, but sort of the worst-case scenario for Rishi Sunak, how small that rump could be? Could it be less than 100 MPs?
Oh, I think it could very easily be that, the way he's going. I mean, even the campaign has been a series of blunders. But A week is a long time in politics. We've got 3 weeks until the election itself. I'm not counting any chickens. Nigel isn't counting any chickens. And I think that we will have to wait and see the scale of the defeat, but massive defeat it will be. And when they say a vote for reform is a vote for Labour, that is nonsense. Labour is going to win anyway, so you might as well argue that a vote for the Tories is a vote for Labour.
And if the Tories do collapse at the election, do they get replaced by Reform UK, or does Nigel re-enter the Tory machine, perhaps with your support, and saves them in a dramatic takeover?
I think the only way they will be saved is not by Nigel joining the Tories, but by them joining Reform and having a realignment of the centre-right. I mean, that is what we need in this country. We need a realignment of the centre-right, because what we've got at Westminster, we've got a red party and we've got a pink party. We haven't actually got a centre-right party.
Although, Anne, I would have thought that Nigel Farage fancies reinventing this venerated institution, the Conservative Party, the most successful political force in the history of European democracy, a party of which you were a proud member for many years. Would you rejoin a reformed Conservative Party that enjoyed the support of someone like Nigel Farage?
Well, if it was being led by Nigel Farage, I would look at it extremely seriously, but it wouldn't be rejoining the Conservative Party. It would be a new party, a new centre-right alignment.
So, Anne, are you determined? Are you determined that the brand must die?
I'm very determined that the Conservatives must actually be pulverised this time in order that some sort of phoenix can rise from the ashes, because they can't go on as they are. I cannot believe, Nigel, I'm sorry, not Nigel, Mark. I know I've said it before on your programme, and I'm going to say it again. I still can't believe, just get into my head, that a party that came in with an 18 majority and a massive mandate has made such an unholy mess of everything. I can hardly believe it. And a lot of it, as I've said before, is down to the quality of MPs, which is appalling.
Well, they certainly miss you, let me tell you that, Anne. Can we talk about social media? Much of the election is being fought on TikTok, on Twitter, Instagram, all the rest of it. Let's take a look at a couple of popular internet videos known as memes to the kids.
Bombastic side-eye, criminal offensive side-eye.
Everybody's got a fear of something.
Not everybody.
The general election.
Oh, well, there you go, Anne. There's a satire. If you were running for your seat right now, would you be doing TikTok videos?
Well, as you know, I do no social media at all, and I resolutely stuck to that while I was an MP, and it was starting to come in as I was leaving. But now I think there is no argument at all that whether I did it or not, or whether I got somebody else to do it, there would have to be some sort of presence on social media. Even if it's just Facebook, I think it's very hard now to say that you can do without it entirely. Well, it's the new way of canvassing.
And you are already an internet sensation, because my brilliant digital team, Daniel's working on the show tonight, we clip up your comments on a Sunday night. They go viral. You make a lot of noise. You've had millions of impressions. Long may it continue. Anne, I'll see you in a week's time. My thanks to Anne Widdecombe there. Next up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction from tonight's top pundits. Plus, in the last word, all the election latest and a civil war in Europe. It's Frexit, that's right, the French Brexit, on the way. We'll be asking our well-connected Fleet Street insider. Papers next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of rain around for many of us overnight tonight, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes to start on Monday. This frontal system sinks its way south and eastwards overnight Sunday and into the start of Monday, but high pressure is never too far away out towards the southwest. Those frontal systems bring areas of rain that have affected Northern Ireland today across parts of Wales, central and northern parts of England through the early hours of Monday morning. Generally turning drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, where it's likely to turn chilly under those clear spells, perhaps a touch of grass frost in places, but a much milder start across much of England and Wales, and quite a damp start too, as that area of rain slowly pushes its way south and eastwards through the morning. For Scotland though, despite a chilly start, there will be plenty of sunny spells through the morning. Across the very far north, plenty of showers though, pushing their way southwards as we go towards the afternoon. But for southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, even northwestern parts of England, plenty of sunny spells to start the day. Wales will also see some sunshine through the morning, but for much of England, it's generally a cloudier start to the day, and that heavy rain could cause some disruption during the morning rush hour. That rain continues to push its way eastwards as we go through the rest of Monday morning and in towards the afternoon, but closely followed by plenty of heavy showers pushing their way southwards. These perhaps turning quite persistent across parts of Scotland, and they could be quite heavy in places. The best of the sunshine across parts of Wales and southwest England, but temperatures still disappointing for the time of year, only 18 or 19 degrees in the south and around 10 to 12 degrees further north. Tuesday generally starts a little bit dry though. There will still be plenty of showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along eastern coast as well, and generally a bit of a cloudier day, particularly as we head towards the afternoon. The showers perhaps not quite as heavy in eastern parts of England as they're going to be on Monday, but still some showers around on Wednesday as well. There is further outbreaks of rain likely on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but temperatures slowly on the rise.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:30, so time for tomorrow's front pages. Daily Mirror, that's the topic of our take at 10. Dr. Michael Mosley, dead. He so very nearly made it. Wife's tribute to TV doc after body found in searing heat near a bar. Daily Mail, my brilliant husband Michael so very nearly made it. It seems he fell from a certain height, tried to scramble back into a safe position, but ultimately perished. The Times, Macron calls snap election after populists make gains in the EU. Tories must embrace Farage, says Suella Braverman, and wife's tribute after TV doctor found dead. The Guardian, wonderful and kind, tributes after Michael Mosley found dead. Macron calls snap election after surge of the far right. Oh, that pesky democracy, eh? Also, Gantz quits emergency war cabinet in Israel. The Israeli politician and former military chief Benny Gantz has followed through on a threat to resign from Benjamin Netanyahu's emergency war cabinet, leaving the Prime Minister more reliant on far-right elements of his coalition government. And Labour pledged to create 100,000 nursery places. The newspaper, Labour yet to convince voters on key policy areas, according to a new poll. This is a BMG research survey for the suggesting Keir Starmer has yet to convince voters that Labour has the answers to the challenges facing Britain. This ahead of this week's manifesto launch. Financial Times, Labour throws out proposal to bring back lifetime cap on tax-free pensions. And the Metro, grief for kind, brilliant husband. Heartbreak as TV doc's body
found. Those are your front pages. Let's get full pundit reaction now. Journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and social worker and commentator Yosef David. So many stories that we need to sink our teeth into. We'll go back to Michael Mosley in a moment, but can I ask you about this story, Linda Jubilee in The Times? The Tories must embrace Nigel Farage, says former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. Is she right?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer. I understand why she has said it, because that's what she believes is the answer. But I don't know really whether that's a wise thing to articulate right at the moment.
Yes, Nigel Nelson, you heard Anne Widdecombe there waxing lyrical about Nigel Farage and how potentially within days he could become the opposition with the Tories a small rump on those green benches. What's your appraisal of this sort of Farage fever we're currently seeing at the moment?
Well, I mean, certainly he's damaging the Tories, and he will be actually helping Labour get a bigger majority. I think at the moment the idea that Nigel Farage will then go on to lead the Tories is a bit far-fetched. Kemi Badenoch says if she was leader that he won't be allowed into the party. Now, Suella Braverman, I would imagine, will run for the leadership too. She's obviously suggesting that he might be allowed in. Because of the first-past-the-post system, even if he starts getting MPs, and at the moment, the way the polling's going, he would get about 3 MPs, but once they get to 20 points, they would get more. The idea of being able to be the effective opposition is not really a goer. If the Tories collapse, the Lib Dems are going to be the opposition.
I mean, I suppose the prospect of Nigel Farage in the House of Commons, he will certainly use that platform for all it's worth, won't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he is a consummate politician. He's very good at the game of politics, but more than Rishi Sunak is, for instance. So he'll certainly do that, but I'm not sure he's going to have the power base within the Commons to be able to do much more than sound off.
Yes, I mean, do you think the Conservatives should be showing Nigel Farage a bit of leg? Yosef?
Well, interesting way of putting it. Conservatism is much more than Nigel Farage. If the party returned to traditional Conservative values, they wouldn't need just one individual. This has been built for years, ever since the Labour government of '97 and Tony Blair. We've all been Blairites since. We haven't actually had a social Conservative. We had an economic Conservative for a few days, and look how the system closed her down. So I don't think necessarily that Nigel Farage is the answer for the Conservative Party. However, he is the answer when it comes to the politics of fear and a limited pool of parties to actually vote for. More democracy is always good.
Well, I think the Tories are panicking on every level. And I think Suella Braverman...
a lot to panic about.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they could be facing a wipeout. So the idea that Suella Braverman wants to entertain this with Nigel Farage, I think is a little bit... it's just a weak...
It'll be seen as another national service announcement.
It'll
be seen as another
desperate service announcement. It's another panic-stricken, weak gimmick. That's the problem with it.
Could things get worse for Rishi Sunak in the weeks ahead?
They can get worse. Yeah, of course.
What do you think, Nigel? Well, has he got all the bad news out the way now?
Well, I mean, everyone thought that at the moment that his high spot seems to be being rained on making the announcement in the first place. That everyone thought that was the worst part he was. Think what happened in Canada. Back in 1993, the Conservatives went into the election with 156 MPs and a majority, ended up with 2. Polls are talking at the moment about 50-odd Tory MPs coming back. So, yes, it could get an awful lot worse for Rishi Sunak.
Is there still a case for a Rishi-led Conservative government, Yosef David?
Absolutely, until the election, and then we'll see how he does. The voters will make their decision. I think we all know, we can all feel the temperature and see the way things are going. Rishi Sunak was not elected by the country. He also wasn't elected by the party membership. So for stability reasons, he must lead us into the next election. And after that, we're going to have to take stock, look at the amount of seats that we have, how we've fared, how the public have treated us, and then make a decision based on that.
But is there any reason for my viewers or listeners to vote Conservative on July the 4th?
Yes, if you don't want a Labour government, the party that can be in power instead of Labour is the Conservatives.
Is that it? Is that the best you've got?
Right now, what I will say...
You are a Conservative supporter, aren't you?
I am. What you will get with the Labour Party, which is as much a criticism of the Labour Party as the Conservatives, what you will get with the Labour Party is much the same as what you will get with the Conservative Party. It does not fill me with joy to say that. It's a very hard thing to say, but the parties are very, very similar.
But at the end of the day, it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Mark, with your monologue at the beginning of the programme. Unless someone seriously addresses the economy, we are going to be in dire straits. We are certainly going to have to do the hard yards for between 5 and 10 years.
Yeah.
So the problem is people are truly confused now about who to vote for. Later on, we'll be discussing the Eye's front page headline, which is exactly saying this. It's not saying that the situation's desperate for Labour. It's simply saying that people don't really understand or want to vote for Labour policies. But it's no better for Conservatives.
Well, I'm glad you picked on that story in the Eye. Nigel Nelson, Labour yet to convince voters on key policy areas. And this in the Guardian, which should be a good news story for Labour, but I think it raises more questions than it answers, which is Labour pledge to create 100,000 nursery places without raising income tax, VAT or national insurance. How's that going to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do that. The answer is that there is spare capacity in primary...
Back of the sofa?
Pardon?
Back of the sofa?
Well, no, I mean, there's spare capacity in primary schools, and what you do is that you put your nurseries in, say, a classroom that's not being used. I mean, that is the plan. It goes along with the breakfast clubs that they're also talking about. The money comes from the extending the tax on non-doms. So all that is possible, but that's the joined-up policy on early years for children.
OK, I mean, what do you think about that yourself, David? I mean, the public will look at some of these ambitious plans from Labour and wonder how it's going to be paid for, just as they would criticise the Tories for their spending plans as well.
So I think Labour's policies very often can be characterised by unfunded plans, and they've somewhat been muted with regard to their plans. In fact, Keir Starmer didn't rule out a cut to public services. They're trying to sound like the party of government. What will happen when they're challenged by the unions after a few months in power remains to be seen. But at the moment, this seems to be one of the worst policies in terms of it not being funded. They are talking fairly sensibly at the moment.
OK, brilliant stuff. And wife's tribute after TV doctor found dead. This is a guy, Nigel Nelson, who was on our TV screens. In many ways, probably the best communicator about medical issues in the country. Because he didn't sound like a scientist, did he? He wasn't highfalutin.
He was never a doctor either. He went
a qualified doctor.
Yeah, he was a qualified doctor, but he never actually practiced medicine. So
maybe that's why he was so good.
I was going to say probably that is the reason. He's more of a journalist than he was a doctor. So he had all the ideas and he was able to actually communicate them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Also,
brilliant.
he had self-belief because things had actually happened to him. Yes, his father had diabetes, because he knew that the very low-calorie diet worked. He had the voice of authenticity. It's what every communication advisor wants to tell people.
Most definitely. Well, coming up, more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. And in the last word, I'm delighted to say we'll be joined by our top Fleet Street insider for more electoral twists and turns. Are Labour ready for government? We'll debate that next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into. Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldier's role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifleman and I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for 2 guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now, more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News, weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. More front pages just in, hot off the press, courtesy of producer James. And we have the Daily Telegraph. Macron trounced in right-wing EU surge. Michael Mosley so nearly made it. And Sunak pledges to put 8,000 more bobbies on the beat. And the Daily Star. Asparagus psychic tip. Mystic veg. Bet England to win. That's right. England will win the Euros, says a world-famous Asparamancer, who predicts the future by the way tips land. Spear we go, say the Daily Star. I do hope that Harry Kane's wee doesn't smell weird after that asparagus. Listen, lots of big stories to sink our teeth into. Let's do that in the last word, in the company of the deputy political editor and columnist at the Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikhailova. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to see you on the programme. First of all, Rishi Sunak pledges to put 8,000 bobbies on the beat. Will that move the political dial?
It's a very good question. Certainly Number 10 is very keen to move the conversation off away from D-Day. Will this have an effect? Probably not, considering the Telegraph isn't even splashing it. But, I mean, the most interesting part of the announcement, I think, is the way they said they're going to fund it, which is by increasing the surcharge on people who come here on health degrees and general visas. So there's an immigration angle that does sound like pretty clever policy. I haven't seen the detail, and obviously is designed to appeal to that base, the one that you were describing earlier that Suella Braverman is so very much trying to woo.
Anna, you are a veteran of the political circuit. Do you think that Rishi Sunak has reached the point of no return?
Oh, I mean, I think the D-Day decision is going to mark his campaign, and even further than that. I mean, we had people telling us yesterday that is coming up on the doorstep already with Conservative MPs, not just about the campaign. They said they're even going to be talking about it the day after Election Day. I mean, it's that big. I think it actually might, seeing the strength of feeling about it, it might actually affect the way people view his premiership full stop, not just the campaign.
Indeed, of course, Labour are ahead in the polls. It looks like an insuperable lead that they now enjoy. Is Sir Keir Starmer ready for number 10? Are Labour ready for power?
Well, they're certainly doing a lot to be ready. So Sue Gray, who, as we know, Keir Starmer poached from a very senior job in the civil service, her job is to work up his first 100 days. I mean, she's been doing this for months, actually. So they are certainly trying to get themselves match fit, as they call it, and actually map up the first few months in office. And of course, she is someone who knows the civil service inside out. I mean, the big question is, what surprises will there be come election day? Because, for example, we'll see the Labour manifesto this week, but it's expected to be very thin on the ground, very thin on detail. Remember when Tony Blair came in, one of the biggest things he did at the beginning in his premiership was make the Bank of England independent. Now, that wasn't in the manifesto. So there may well be surprises that we just don't know about.
And do you have the impression that Sir Keir Starmer himself is ready for the top job? Or do you think it's going to be a bumpy start should he prevail on the 4th of July?
Well, it's again, to come back to Tony Blair, his famous quote that when you enter Downing Street, you have the biggest amount of political capital, but the least amount of readiness. And when you leave, you're the most ready to be doing the job, but you have absolutely no ability to do it because no one believes in you anymore. So, look, he'll be personally I think he's obviously been preparing for it. I think, the economy, the state of the economy, the state of the country, the state of geopolitics is going to be so difficult that his in-tray is just going to be extremely, extremely hard. He's going to grapple with everything that Rishi Sunak's been grappling with. I think that I think, as you've already said in the programme, we're in for a very bumpy few years ahead.
Anna, I'll bring my pundits in just a moment, but it's interesting, isn't it? The UK looks to be an anomaly at the moment because it's likely that we will shift to the left with a Labour government on the 5th of July. Meanwhile, continental Europe is shifting right. And an extraordinary story in The Telegraph, reported in a couple of the other papers as well, The Guardian and The Times, which is that Emmanuel Macron has called a snap legislative election because of a right-wing surge in the EU parliamentary elections. So we're shifting left, but the continent's going right. What's going on?
Well, look, first of all, we're not shifting left, we're shifting centrist. And because obviously Keir Starmer is not a left-wing government, it'll be a centrist, new Labour-type government. Now, secondly, the trend of the right being in ascendance in Europe has been happening for a while. And I don't really know why, and most political analysts spend a lot of time analysing this, but the UK has bucked the trend so far. There have been many, as you all know, reports in previous years of, is the UK also going to switch to the right? And actually, that hasn't happened. That may be down to the way our electoral system is shaped. It may just be down to an anomaly of us being slightly, separate from Europe, of course, obviously. But that hasn't really happened. And what we'll see with the Conservative Party is that debate playing out. So there will be people very much looking at Europe, looking at what's happening in France and saying, this is about to happen here, this is happening here. And then there are those same the other side of that will be saying, absolutely not. If you do that, you're going to be out in the cold for more than one parliament. And the only way to win elections in Britain is through the centre ground.
Well, Anna, stay with us. Let's bring our pundits in if I can. Linda Jubilee, Nigel Nelson and Yosef David. Linda Jubilee, do you agree with Anna Mihailova there that actually this incarnation of Labour is fairly centre ground? I just wonder whether, if you've got Angela Rayner as Deputy Prime Minister and probably some other major cabinet post, whether actually there'll be a tension between left and right of the party.
I think that's what there is a lot of speculation about. But I do think that clearly Keir Starmer has pushed his party to the centre ground. That's obvious to everyone. I don't think you've got the kind of social socialist government we've seen in the past. But it is quite difficult to explain the anomaly between what's going on in Europe and what's going on in the UK. It'll be interesting to see how it rolls out in Europe.
Well, indeed. Josef, what do you make of these headlines? Because the Daily Telegraph are calling this in Europe a right-wing EU surge, but The Guardian are calling it far-right. I mean, Giorgia Meloni was called far-right, the Italian Prime Minister, when she was elected. Well, she hasn't done anything particularly controversial so far.
I wouldn't put too much emphasis or interest on what The Guardian labels people as. What I would say is that the European Union continues to ignore its citizens. This is why people like Le Pen are being given the time of day. The reason why the right continues to rise in Europe is because people are tied into this political union that they don't really understand and couldn't explain if you asked them, and they get ignored time and again every time there is an election. People don't want federalism, they want localism. And in France, we're seeing the results of this.
Anna, listen, any big predictions for this week? You're expecting a rather underwhelming, or at least certainly lacking in detail, Labour manifesto. Is there anything Rishi Sunak can do? I mean, it's kitchen sink time now, isn't it?
It's absolutely kitchen sink. Well, we've got the two manifestos, and then there will be the reaction to Rishi Sunak's manifesto from within his own party. So I've spoken to MPs who, in the last few days, say that if he doesn't go far enough on certain issues, like the ECHR, so for example, if he doesn't pledge to either quit or have a referendum on quitting, they will run rogue campaigns of their own in their constituencies and promise this themselves. So this is the...
Oh, my goodness. Anna, sorry to interrupt you. That's unbelievable. The wheels could fall off before polling day. Anna, great to have you on the show. Anna Mikhailova from the Mail on Sunday. Thanks to my pundits and the team. I'll see you Friday at 8. Headliners is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of rain around for many of us overnight tonight, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes to start on Monday. This frontal system sinks its way south and eastwards overnight Sunday and into the start of Monday, but high pressure is never too far away out towards the southwest. Those frontal systems bring areas of rain that have affected Northern Ireland today across parts of Wales, central and northern parts of England through the early hours of Monday morning. Generally turning drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, where it's likely to turn chilly under those clear spells, perhaps a touch of grass frost in places, but a much milder start across much of England and Wales, and quite a damp start too, as that area of rain slowly pushes its way south and eastwards through the morning. For Scotland though, despite a chilly start, there will be plenty of sunny spells through the morning. Across the very far north, plenty of showers though, pushing their way southwards as we go towards the afternoon. But for southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, even northwestern parts of England, plenty of sunny spells to start the day. Wales will also see some sunshine through the morning, but for much of England is generally a cloudier start to the day, and that heavy rain could cause some disruption during the morning rush hour. That rain continues to push its way eastwards as we go through the rest of Monday morning and in towards the afternoon, but closely followed by plenty of heavy showers pushing their way southwards, these perhaps turning quite persistent across parts of Scotland, and they could be quite heavy in places. The best of the sunshine across parts of Wales and southwest England, but temperatures still disappointing for the time of year, only 18 or 19 degrees in the south and around 10 to 12 degrees further north. Tuesday generally starts a little bit drier though. There will still be plenty of showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along eastern coast as well, and generally a bit of a cloudier day, particularly as we head towards the afternoon. The showers perhaps not quite as heavy in eastern parts of England as they're going to be on Monday, but still some showers around on Wednesday as well. There is further outbreaks of rain likely on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but temperatures are slowly on the rise.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at GBNews.